Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It is the fourth week of the preseason, arguably the toughest one to go through. There's no doubt that this is a hard waiting week. It's a bit of a yikes. There's not a whole lot going on for the guys in the NFL, at least that are starters. This is a tough week, a really tough week for the guys that are backups that are trying to make the team. But man, this is a tough one to wait out. But that doesn't mean that we don't have some good quality content for you guys. And in between that time where there's not a whole lot to talk about, we can make sure that we go over what we're looking for headed into the season. We can also recap some important things that happened in preseason week 3. And we can get you guys ready to go for week 1, getting out of the gate for the fantasy season. Before we do that, I want to take a quick second. I just want to tell everybody, the hurricane is coming through in Texas. Some of those people are really, really struggling. We just want to mention, if you guys can, go ahead and donate to those causes. If you go to charitynavigator.org, they actually have all of the organizations that are set up to help the Hurricane Harvey relief. And if you go through there, it's actually rated by people, and they have they have like open discussions with what they do with their money and stuff like that, and it helps parse which ones are good to donate to and which ones are not so good to donate to. So I was actually going to announce our Patreon page today. I'm not going to do that. Anything that you guys would be willing to give us, I would much rather you go and give it to the Hurricane Harvey relief. So go do that. Help those guys out. I'm from New Orleans. Joe's from New Orleans. We know how it was going through Hurricane Katrina. It was really helpful for anything anybody gave us. Go ahead and help those guys out for Hurricane Harvey. The people in Texas really need it. There's a lot of flooding going on. So take care of those people. We really, really appreciate that. We want to give a shout out to them and say hopefully everybody's doing good. Take care, be safe. But the best thing to get your mind off a little hurricane effort is to try and do something that you enjoy. And we know that all you guys really like fantasy football. So, one of the first things that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about things that happened in preseason week 3. Okay. And I know Joe and I have been watching a whole lot. I tell you what, Joe, I'm tired. I've been digging all these ditches, dude, to bury my opponents coming up for this season. I've been digging ditches every day since the last couple of games I've been watching. And I am so excited to figure out the best strategies to move forward for week 1. So with that being said, let's talk about some of the things that happened. It was a graveyard. Speaking about digging ditches, it was a graveyard this past week. We had a bunch of big injuries that happened. Let's start talking about the ones. Which one do you want to talk about first? Tell me which one hit you closest to home.
Well, the one that hit me closest to home is the Spencer Ware injury. Quite a few reasons for that. One is he was on some of my fantasy teams before he got hurt. He's a LSU Tiger, so as you can see, Tiger fan. It's hard to see him go down like that. And the other reason is he's the one that's the most predictable how to understand what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
The other major injuries were receivers. Receivers are traditionally harder to predict. Running back, it's the next man up.
Right.
And the next man up in Kansas City is Kareem Hunt.
Right.
Andy Reid made that pretty clear in preseason week 3, Kareem Hunt was already splitting carries with Spencer Ware. Not Charkandrick West or any of these other guys. But Kareem Hunt was already splitting carries like maybe Spencer Ware maybe got 2 at every 3, but Kareem Hunt was in the game before Spencer Ware got hurt.
No doubt.
And was getting carries. So he's going to be the guy. Other guys will come in and out, but he's going to be the guy. And that offense is a really good offense to have running backs in.
Great. It's one of the best running systems in the NFL, if you ask me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think over Andy Reid's career, which is like 12 seasons or something, his running backs average 16 touchdowns per season. Yeah. Now that's not a guarantee that Kareem Hunt is going to get 16. It's the running backs as a whole average 16, not his best running back. But like Kareem Hunt he's a legitimate threat to get 10 or 12 touchdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. Impossible. I mean, the top guy gets half of that for sure, right? If your running back usage depicts any sort of consistency at all whatsoever, your top guy should get that, right? If you're the Patriots, he gets 90% of that, and if you're some running back by committee team like the Eagles or the Saints, he gets 40% of that, right? But the vast majority of the teams, if your usage chart for running backs goes anything like normal, that guy should get half those touchdowns, right? So you're looking at legitimately 8 touchdown floor-ish, right? And then somewhere, like you said, around the 10 to 12 is on the high side. 14 would be absolutely excellent, but Tyreek Hill will get some there, and you'll have some other guy get a couple and stuff like that. So, but yeah, that's 100% the truth. And Kareem, like you said, Andy Reid tipped his hat to Kareem Hunt being the guy to start with long ago. Now tell me, did you do the smart thing and everywhere that you had Spencer Ware, did you handcuff him with Kareem Hunt? Were you able to get him everywhere that you had him?
I did. And I did that because I knew that, well, personally, having watched Spencer Ware for a long time since he was back in college, he's never in his life has he been the best running back on his football team.
Yeah, that's true.
He was a quarterback in high school, so he wasn't a running back then. At LSU, he was never the best running back at LSU. He got cut and transformed to a fullback in Seattle. So I knew that there was a good chance at some point Kareem Hunt, who is a real running back, was going to take the reins of that offense, and it's just happening a lot earlier. So if you did have Spencer Ware, hopefully you got Kareem Hunt, because now Kareem Hunt, in my opinion, is somewhere between the 10th and 18th best running back, probably right around top 15 guy.
Yeah, I would give you a tighter window than that. Like, he's not going to be any better than 8th, right? He's just nobody in the Chiefs offense, other sans Jamal Charles, because it was a really breakaway talent, is going to be better than that. And plus, as we were looking at the games, like, every single play that they run is a gadget play, right? It's a run or a gadget play. So there's a lot of gadget stuff built into their stuff too, and they're going to get a lot of chunk yards that way. So it's just not quite possible to be that highly used. So he's not going to be any better than 8th, and he won't be any worse than 14th. Their running system is too good. Andy Reid is too good at running the ball in their offense for him to be any worse than 15th. And 8 touchdowns is an amazing floor. Like, that's a really, really good floor that a lot of guys don't achieve. So I just don't think that he'll be any worse than that. So you're looking at 8 to 15, and that's like where he's going to be almost guaranteed. So Spencer Ware was a big one. Torn PCL. He's out for the year. I would say the next biggest one, or arguably bigger, no, it's probably not bigger. It's probably the next biggest one. Is got to be Julian Edelman, right? The high power.
Yeah, I mean, certainly.
Good.
It's certainly from a NFL perspective, it's probably the biggest one of all of
the
these, and that
one.
This will impact his team more than any of the other ones.
Yeah.
From a fantasy perspective, it's less important than the Spencer Ware injury, because while it's hard almost always to predict who will replace a receiver, it's even harder in the Patriots offense, the way
really
that
tough.
They play to their strengths, the way they play to their opponent's weaknesses, and the way they spread the ball around. So I don't think that there's a single person who will benefit a ton from this. I think that all of their other receivers do get a bump, because there's 115 targets that aren't going to Edelman now. I think Cooks gets a big bump. I think he's a wide receiver 1 now. I think before he was like a high-end wide receiver 2, and I think he's a wide receiver 1 now. And I think Hogan becomes draftable. Or he may already have been draftable, but I think he becomes like flex wide receiver 4 kind of guy. He's going to be unpredictable because he is kind of a deep threat. But it'll be interesting to see what they do there. And I think their running backs are going to pick up a little bit of the slack. But how do you feel about Edelman? Is anybody going to replace him in the slot?
Well, here's the thing, and this is something that we're going to talk about after we talk about the last major injury. And you and I have talked a lot about this, because this is one of those things where figuring the formulas for this out can almost lead you to like the trends before they happen, right? And it's the idea of how to replace the guy that either gets hurt or loses his job or falls out of favor with the coach. It's being able to get in the coach's head and figure out who the backup is before they're even, or who the starter will be before they even become the starter, right? So we've talked about a few different scenarios. I think it makes Hogan a bit more worthwhile just because there'll be more opportunities there. But I think he's a worse Cooks, right? I think he plays Cook's role more than anybody else in the entire offense. So I think it's more likely that if Cooks went down, Hogan would be your immediate pickup. I think there's not a completely ridiculous chance that either some form of Dion Lewis or Danny Woodhead become the more likely role to soak up the targets in Edelman's role. Yeah, James White. That's what I meant. Sorry. Did I say Woodhead? No, I'm sorry. I mean, James White will definitely soak up targets. I really meant Amendola. I really meant Danny Amendola. So there's a good chance that some sort of conglomerate of Dion Lewis and Danny Amendola will soak up some of those targets that Edelman had. It's because he's used to playing in the slot. That's really the only spot that he's like super effective at, or that he's been really effective at in the past. So I think that that's possible. Gronk is just going to be the same. Like, he's Brady's first read every single time if he has the opportunity. So until he gets hurt, he's going to be exactly the same. He might get like a few more targets where, we might have gone to Edelman in this spot and we'll instead go to Gronk, but he's going to be pretty much the same, and he's very high value. I think Cooks gets a bump a little bit once again because everybody's going to get more targets, but I think that there's like you said, I think there's probably maybe a 30% chance that Danny Amendola gets like a bunch of that. So he may even be the person that I'm looking to add instead of Chris Hogan, but you can't deny that they plugged Chris Hogan in to be the guy to take over in the middle of that game. So that does tell you something too. The Patriots are just a really tough offense to tell, but yeah, I guess we'll talk about this more in how to replace people, but you're looking for the people who would normally be behind them on the depth chart at that position, right? So this is a bit of a tough one. I think Hogan and Amendola both are a likely recipient to maybe try and do something there. I do think Cooks gets a good bump. I don't know if I'm willing to go as high as wide receiver 1, but I think he's like an insanely good wide receiver 2 and a low end wide receiver 1 now, if you want to put him there and you have the strong rest of your team. So, and then moving on to
how much does this hurt Brady, in your opinion?
I just don't think it hurts Brady at all. Like, I mean, not really in any meaningful way. I think that there's a good chance that they start to run the ball more. So that could be, but like not from a, oh my God, I'm out of people to throw to kind of perspective. I
think it means they run a lot more 2 tight end sets than they did last year. And, assuming that Gronk and Dwayne Allen, both of whom are kind of injury risks, as long as those guys are healthy, I think they're going to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. Because
I do think you'll see
they don't really have 3 really good receivers. They don't want to play Amendola, as far as I'm aware. They don't want to play him a lot because he gets hurt a lot. And so they have some set number of snaps they kind of want to keep him around. And I think that number won't elevate that much unless the game is a huge game.
Yeah, I think all those things are pretty fair to say, and especially the point about the 2 tight end sets. You're going to see them run heavy a decent amount, and they're probably going to be effective with it. So, it could hurt Brady in that fashion, not necessarily because he's any worse off, so to speak.
Yeah. All right. So the last major injury of the weekend was a guy who came out of nowhere last year, and hopefully he's able to come back from this. Cameron Meredith. Mm-hmm. So he tore basically everything in his knee. He's totally out for this year, and hopefully he can come back next year. But it's looking like it's one of these really bad ones that who knows how long it could be. So he was the only receiver, I think, that we were recommending anybody draft out of that team. So what does this look like in the aftermath of Cameron Meredith's injury?
He went full splody knee on you, dude. Like, he did the whole thing. He didn't sacrifice any part of his knee. The good part is not to make light of people's injuries. Like, these guys, I mean, they have to make a career for themselves. And he's young, and he has a big contract ahead of him. So I wish him the best. I hope that he does well in his recovery. The good news for him is that we're getting better at soft tissue recovery all the time. So I don't expect this is anything that'll have like some ridiculous impact on him for the future. Plus, he's a big guy. He doesn't necessarily need to make like insane little cuts and stuff like that. He needs to be able to run his routes, but he can body people up and he can make good receptions that way. So I think he'll be back and he'll be fine. The sort of silver lining to the whole thing is that it let us see the rest of the Bears offense, which I was actually way more impressed with than I thought that I was going to be before the preseason week 3. It's not anything against them. I just thought it was going to be weaker, and I don't think it's going to be quite as bad. I think Kendall Wright is going to be an awesome pickup for people either who lost Cameron Meredith or who just need to pick someone up, especially in PPR leagues. But I even think that he'll be able to tear some people up in standard leagues too. Kevin White just like isn't instilling an amazing amount of confidence in me. So I would say that the second best person after that is probably Zach Miller, because he replaces some of that big body, red zone work, can really be a reliable target on third down. I think that's the kind of player that I may be looking to replace with him. What was your takeaway from the Bears after Cameron Meredith went down?
Well, I mean, the real thing is this offense isn't going to be great, but they're not going to be terrible.
Right.
And somebody's going to have to catch the ball for them not to be terrible.
Yep.
So they have Mike Glennon. He's got a pretty strong arm. So you'd think at some point they're going to want to take some shots. And while Kendall Wright can do that, I think he's lining up more often in the slot.
He's going to play almost all in the slot, I think.
So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on who, if anyone, develops on the outside for them. Mm-hmm. My guess is it would be a big body guy, someone like Kevin White, but this guy has shown us nothing. Is basically his rookie year, hasn't played football in over 2 years. So I'm not say like I don't want to say that, but I would say keep an eye on that offense because I wouldn't be surprised if someone emerged as an outside target for Mike Glennon out of there.
Yeah. I think those are all good points. I actually think Mike Glennon is a better quarterback than he gets a rap for. Every single place that he's ever played at, people speak very highly of him. Like he has a very, very good and the things that have happened have not really been his fault, right? Like you can't necessarily blame somebody like Tampa Bay taking they have the first overall pick to take Winston, right? Like if you have a chance to get a playmaking quarterback that you think is the future guy, I'm not condoning the guy behind, like I'm not condemning the guy behind him and saying, oh, that guy's shit. It's just because they got an opportunity to pick somebody better that they think is the franchise guy. So they moved on from him and they had no ill will. He did everything positive at every place that he's been. And he's a pretty good quarterback. And I'm not afraid of Trubisky either, really, at this point. It doesn't seem like it, at least. So I'm not afraid to pick their wide receivers like I was 2 months ago. I was really terrified to pick those guys.
Well, let me close with this and then we'll move on. Just backing up Mike Glennon again, the Bucs refused to trade him. Yeah. They drafted Jameis Winston, and then they held on to him for 2 years, knowing that his contract would expire.
Right.
And they'd get nothing for him. They refused to trade him. And the reason is because they thought he was a really good backup, and they wanted to make sure that Jameis was the guy they wanted before they moved on from Mike Glennon.
100%. Yeah, I think that speaks volumes for a guy that they know that they probably could have shopped and got something. They got trade inquiries for him. Like that speaks volumes that you want to hold on to that guy. So yeah, that's definitely a good point. So I guess in closing with the sort of injury thing, moving forward when you're looking at your fantasy season, the thing that you really want to understand is what is the true depth chart, not necessarily going to a place online and just pulling up a depth chart. You want to actually see who plays behind such and such at this position, right? So a running back that plays behind only the third down guy is not going to take over once the first and second down running back goes down, right? The guy who plays in the slot isn't necessarily the backup slot guy isn't going to move to the outside when they need a receiver that went down on the outside. So you need to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples when you're talking about the true depth chart. And this is where some of the watching football comes into a major play here. But that's why we do it for you guys, and we'll try and make sure that we give you the accurate people to pick up. So, if somebody goes down with injury, make sure you tune in. We'll try and tweet these things out. We'll try and be active with you guys, letting you know who the actual proper backup is when you're trying to go pick somebody up. So I would say that it's if we want to give them the short and sweet on these 3 injuries, I would say, Chris Hogan, and then after that, Amendola is probably the best 2 guys to pick up there. The best guy to pick up for Ware is obviously Kareem Hunt. You probably should have had him already. He should have been drafted. And then for Meredith, I would say it's a split. If you want to get the person who's going to get the big body stuff from him, I would say Zach Miller is probably your guy. If you want to take a swing for the fences on Kevin White, you're more than welcome to do that. But if you want to pick up volume more than anything else, especially for a PPR league, get Kendall Wright. Those are probably your best options. So, not exactly injured, but traded to a better scenario, I would say, is Vance McDonald. We actually had a trade. This is not super usual. It's not super common for something to happen at this timing in the NFL. Usually people wait to see when cuts happen and then see if they can get their hands on somebody that they wanted. But Vance McDonald was traded from the San Francisco 49ers to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe, what's your takeaway? What should we be expecting from McDonald? What does it mean for the 49ers? Tell me a little bit about the situation.
Well, so coming from the 49ers, Vance McDonald playing in a Shanahan offense, their tight ends get a reasonable number of touchdowns, but they don't really get very many yards, if at all. And they use several different tight ends. So it would have been a very frustrating experience for him. He probably wasn't drafted very much. It's not because he's not talented. It's just that offense doesn't really support a tight end week to week. But I do think that going to the Steelers is a big upgrade for him. Ben is known to favor his tight end, especially in the red zone. Heath Miller's long been a late round draft favorite of fantasy players. He was the Steelers tight end for many years, and now he's retired. So I think Vance is going to take that job, and that's why the Steelers traded for him. They wouldn't have traded for him if they didn't think he was going to come in and play. So I think that he's now draftable if you still have a draft. I don't think that he's guaranteed to be a top 10 tight end. I think that he'll slot in somewhere between tight end 8 and tight end 16, like somewhere in that range. So he's definitely startable on a week-to-week basis if you pick him. He's not going to get 1,000 yards. He's going to be looking at somewhere between 550 and 750 yards and somewhere between 4 and 8 touchdowns. So right in that clump of like tight end mediocrity. Right. But he's another one that you can pick up on bye weeks, or if you need somebody like that, if somebody gets hurt, you can pick him up. He's playable. And it's just another tight end in the pool of mediocre tight ends.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points to take away from this. I'll try and be brief. We want to keep it moving. This is the tight end that people have been looking for just seasons since Heath Miller retired, right? Like this is what they thought they were getting out of Ladarius Green. This is what they thought that they were getting out of the Outlaw and Jesse James. This is every single time that the Steelers have a tight end that hasn't been Heath Miller, people are clutching, believing that this is going to be the person. Now, Vance McDonald is better than he's probably not better than Ladarius Green as far as athleticism goes, but Ladarius Green had way too many issues as far as health is concerned, and he just was never going to stay on the field. Vance McDonald is a pretty athletic tight end. He wasn't going to get anything done in the Shanahan offense, right? We know those guys. We've seen them 1,000 times. They're just not that productive. And Ben really does love his tight end. So he is like Vance McDonald could be the savior for you if you drafted an entire team and you came away with an absolute crap tight end. This is a guy that you can plug and play every week and he won't get you zero. In an up and down, Ben Roethlisberger roller coaster, the tight end is the thing that's by far the most steady. He's not going to get you 25 points. Like that's just not going to happen. He's not going to Gronk or Jordan Reed your day ever, not once. However, he'll never get you below 5, and he will never get you 0. That's the other side to it. So if you were able to make it through in a draft and you got a really strong team and you just struggled at tight end and you're worried about what that guy's going to do week 1, like Jack Doyle with Luck being out, Fleener, who's like got almost no playing time. He's just been pushed back on the depth chart. People like that. If you have those kind of guys, I don't see any reason why you can't pick up Vance McDonald and hope for the best week 1, and he should slot in just fine in that offense. So another couple of things that we took away that were really, really big from week 3 were we had finally some clarity on the QB battles that were happening in Cleveland, in New York, in the Jets, in Jacksonville, and the Bears. The Bears were the other one. I don't know that I would call it a battle, but they were definitely testing out their options and seeing how Trubisky looked for the first couple of weeks. So finally we have some clarity. Joe, tell me, pick the winner that you think makes the most difference, and then tell me why you kind of think that difference is going to be made so impactfully.
Well, I think the one that makes the most difference, I'm going to have to say Deshaun Kaiser. And the reason really is that the other 3 were more expected. The favorites won those competitions.
Yeah.
But Kaiser was not drafted to start this year. And I think if you had asked anybody, including him probably at the beginning of the preseason, he wouldn't have been the starter week 1. They were hoping for either Brock or Cody Kessler to take the job, and neither of them did, and Kaiser looked the best. Not only that, but most importantly, I suppose, for the Browns and for anybody who's drafted Browns or is thinking of drafting Browns, Kaiser is not Brock. And so he won't just cripple the offense in the way that Brock crippled Houston's fantasy team. Anybody you would draft from Houston.
And crippled them during the preseason. He didn't just he proved it again. Yeah, like it wasn't like he gave us a glimmer of hope either.
No, yeah. And so Kaiser looked okay. He's got a strong arm. He was 6 for 18. He's not going to complete a lot of passes in the beginning. He's going to struggle at first. But he's better than Brock Osweiler in that he gives you some threats. The passes that were incomplete were at least like around the receiver most of the time.
They were.
And I think he's got a chance to, as the season goes on, to get better. I don't think he'll ever be a top 32 starting quarterback this year in the NFL. I think there will be backups who are better than him. But I think that he does keep the Browns that you were thinking of playing. That is Isaiah Crowell, Duke Johnson, and Corey Coleman, and maybe Kenny Britt. I think he keeps them relevant.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point here is just that this is so sad too. Like this is how bad if you haven't been paying attention to anything before that we've said, and I even tweeted out, I said if the Browns start Brock Osweiler, they're trying to tank the season. If you haven't been paying attention, like, this is how horrible Brock Osweiler is, right? Anywhere that he goes, there's just a rain cloud that is just like follows him and just is fantasy shit. That's what it is. And just by being not Brock, like being the lowest level of competence, all of their players are now relevant again. Like, that's how bad Brock Osweiler has been. And so I do think that that's by far the most impactful thing, is Kaiser winning out the job. He's not great. He's fine. He'll definitely, I think the good part is that he could lock on to Corey Coleman this year, and Corey Coleman could be totally worthwhile. If you can get him late, or he hasn't been picked up for some strange reason, go grab Corey Coleman. He could be, and he's good. Like, Corey Coleman has been a really, truly a delight to watch for the first couple of weeks of the preseason. So Kaiser winning out has to be the most important one. I would say the next most important one, once again, just by kind of like a war of attrition, is Josh McCown. And it's because the other guys were just so garbo that I wouldn't have drafted any Jets whatsoever. Now I can at least say that Robbie Anderson will get like 800 yards. Like, somebody's got to catch passes there, and Josh McCown can complete passes. So it's probably your guy.
Yeah, and if Bryce Petty ever gets back in, Robbie Anderson's definitely your guy.
Yeah. Wait, I was about to say, explain.
When Bryce Petty got in toward the end of the season last year, he targeted Robbie Anderson like 10 or 15 times a game, and all of them were deep passes. So as long as he catches one or two of them, you made your day.
Yeah.
And there's a chance that Bryce Petty actually will get in this year.
Yeah.
So for that reason alone, Robbie Anderson might be worth stashing as a late round guy. But someone's got to catch the ball. It's the same as the Bears. Somebody's got to catch the ball out there. Robbie Anderson's the best of a mediocre at best bunch. And and so, we'll see. Maybe the Jets will pick up somebody off the waiver wire, some veteran receiver who gets cut. But for now, Robbie Anderson's the guy. He's not going to be anything special this year, but he could play in your flex spot during the bye week parts of the season.
Right. Somebody like that. Yeah. I think he's like, if we're going along with where they would play, he's like probably a pretty consistent wide receiver, like 5, if you will, right? Like along the lines of the fantasy tiers. So, who do you think of the remaining two, of Bortles and Glennon? Who do you think is the most impactful starter decision from the last of those two?
Man,
I have an answer. I have an answer.
Bortles is
really
kind of
have
irrelevant, I think.
Yeah.
I think Bortles is kind of irrelevant because I don't think that Henne is any better, and I don't think that Bortles was any good either. And Bortles already showed last year that he can cripple an offense. And I think they're just going to run the heck out of the ball regardless of who plays quarterback for them. So I think that Fournette and is going to get a lot of carries. I think that they're going to also give the other running backs carries.
Yeah, no doubt.
Probably they'll pepper Allen Robinson. Maybe Bortles will lock on Allen Robinson and make him relevant, but he locked on him last year. It didn't help him.
That was my only reason for saying that I'm not that afraid of Glennon or Trubisky, and so I don't think that it makes that big of a difference. And I think that with Bortles, you get the lock-on effect to Allen Robinson when they don't run the ball, and we're legit 50-50 now. Like, he had one really good season, then he had one really absolutely well, he didn't have a good season, but he produced fantasy receivers, right? Like at a great spot. And so I'm totally fine with that. And then we had one season that was absolutely terrible. I'm willing to take the toss up that he can lock into Allen Robinson and not throw all of the balls completely away from him. And so
let me tell you what I think about Bortles is I think that team is going to be a lot better this year, and I think that is terrible news for Blake Bortles and his fantasy ability.
That's true.
Because he is terrible until the other team puts their backups in.
Yeah.
And that's when he makes all of his fantasy points.
Or plays prevent defense until they play prevent defense.
They start playing prevent defense, and then he throws the ball to Allen Robinson, and they both get lots of fantasy points, and it looks like they're doing well.
Yeah,
but they're not.
That's true.
And because they're going to run the ball a lot, the game's just going to be closer because there will be fewer plays. Their defense is actually okay, and Coughlin should hire a defensive coordinator who should do okay there. I think their defense will be fine. So I don't think they're going to be getting blown out as much as they have in the past. And I think while that's good news for the head coach, it's bad news for Blake Bortles.
Yeah, that's probably a good point. So I'll go with you that Glennon is probably the next most impactful. So tell me, well, I guess we've talked about the Bears a bit. Tell me the one most important thing, and then we'll move on, that you think that Glennon has over Trubisky by winning that job.
Oh, well, I mean, I think he just has more experience. I don't know that he has a lot of experience, or he doesn't have a lot of enough experience to have tendencies that we can really pick up on as far as, what he really, really likes to do. But I think he does have a strong arm, so I think he's going to look to go deep when he can. But I think, the thing he'll probably do more than Trubisky would do is probably check down to Jordan Howard or the tight end, maybe.
That's what I was gonna say. I think Mike Glennon checking down to the tight end is probably the most likely thing that's gonna happen, tendency wise, that you're gonna see out of him this year. I don't mean to like knock it home that Zach Miller is like some excellent guy, but in a bunch of leagues, like he's being undrafted and stuff, and he should probably be on your roster somewhere, especially if you need a second tight end or something like that. So I think you're going to see some check downs to Zach Miller, which will make him a bit more valuable than if Trubisky was in there taking some shots. So all right, so those are the QB battle winners. Make sure that you adjust accordingly. Kaiser, Bortles, Glennon, McCown, those guys won, and you should now know what they mean for your fantasy season coming up. So other than that, let's go with just general takeaways from what you saw in preseason week 3, Joe. This is the one where most teams play their starters for almost guaranteed a whole quarter. Some play them for an entire half, depending on what the situation is. Some people need to be seen more than others. Obviously, like we saw David Johnson almost nothing, as we should. Like I don't want to see him in there at all. There's no chance on him getting hurt, right? So, we saw a half for most starters, and for skill positions that aren't quarterbacks, we even saw more for some people. Tell me the first general takeaway that you have that you thought was something interesting from week 3 that you weren't expecting.
Well, as anybody who's watching the stream knows, the thing I was most excited about for the last 3 weeks was to see Cam Newton throw a football. We only kind of got to see that. But the big takeaway. So, for those of you who didn't watch the game, the Panthers, Cam played the first series only. The Panthers had something like a 12 or 13 play drive for a touchdown.
10 play drive.
They threw the ball 8 times. They ran the ball 8 times.
Yep.
With the running backs, not with Cam, of course. And then they threw it twice. One was a dump off screen to McCaffrey for it was a 3-yard pass that turned into a bigger gain. And the other was a slant to Kelvin Benjamin for the touchdown. So Cam threw 2 passes for 3 that traveled 3 yards in the air each, and had a touchdown. So that was good. But the point is, we still have no idea how his shoulder is doing, if he can throw, how he feels in this offense. He never got past his first read, so we still don't know a lot. What we do know is that the coaches don't think he's ready to chuck the ball around. That's fair. And as a result, they're going to run the heck out of the ball the first week and maybe longer of the season. So if you have either Jonathan Stewart or Christian McCaffrey, I would play those guys week 1.
Yeah, 100%. I swear, while I was watching that game, I think I saw Cam look up to the camera and go, "Gotcha, Joe," because I knew you were gonna be so mad when that happened. It was pretty funny watching it, but yeah, this is definitely true. I think it was like the coaches are trying to give you the hint of what's happening here, right? So they obviously think he's not super, super ready. And, I mean, they really did. The ball traveled probably a total of 6 yards through the air. Now, their offense looked pretty good. Like, their line looked a bit better than I thought that they were going to look. They didn't look quite as crap as I originally thought they were going to. I still don't have a ton of confidence in that run game, but you're right. They're going to get crazy amounts of volume the first couple of weeks, and we should keep an eye on Cam and make sure that his health progress is good before we're just ready to roll him out there. I would not be starting I really wouldn't be starting their receivers week 1. We really aren't looking towards week 1 yet, but this is something that could play in a little bit further on. So, but that would be something that I would look to keep my eyes on and see how he's doing in practice. Keeping with quarterbacks, I thought Matt Ryan looked bad. Yikes. He looked rough. It wasn't, I'm not saying that Matt Ryan is going to be a horrible quarterback for 16 games of the NFL season, but this is not the MVP that we saw from the year before. I knew we harp a lot on Shanahan, but this is a dual effect, right? This is his first year with a new offensive coordinator, which he struggled with in the past, and this is one of the best coordinators in football, also leaving a really talented football team. He just looked rough, and it's worrisome, right? He's not going to be the top 5 quarterback that we had the year before. He's not going to have 38 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. I doubt it.
don't draft Matt Ryan expecting to get the Matt Ryan of last year.
Yeah,
Draft Matt Ryan expecting to get the same Matt Ryan that you got all of the other years.
Right.
There's a distinct difference in his stats for all of the other years and last year. You're going to get the one from all of the other years.
Right.
Right. Last year was an anomaly. He's not throwing 38 touchdowns again. They're not going to be the best offense in football again.
Right.
He's going to be a startable fantasy player, so don't freak out and drop him. But he's not going to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback either.
Yeah, I think their defense is better again, right? Their defense is consistently getting better. Their head coach is all about defense. That's what he wants to be. He wants to be a defensive. He came from the Seahawks. He wants to be a defensively minded team. So their defense is getting better. That means that they should have to do less on offense. And then their line is really good, and they're good at running the ball. They're going to run the ball a lot. So you're going to get a lot of catches from the running backs, and like Julio is still going to be really, really good. He'll probably have a touchdown progression this year, if you will. He'll have more touchdowns this year, but Matt Ryan is just it's worrisome. I'm not saying he's going to be terrible, but it was something that definitely showed up to me, and it was very obvious that Matt Ryan was really struggling. What's something else that you took away from week 3?
Well, so one thing that I think a lot of people were interested and excited about, because he is a big name and has been an incredible fantasy player in the past, is Jamal Charles.
Yeah.
And he, finally got to play in the preseason. This is basically the first time he's carried a football in like 2 years, or a year and a half. So it was really good to see him out there. And the real question people have been having, and including the Broncos coaches and staff, is like, does he still have it? And is he going to, can we keep him on the roster? Is he going to make the team? Because he's not going to play special teams. So if they're only keeping him on the roster if he's going to have a role in a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think he makes the team. I think he makes the team.
He made it clear that he's making the team, and the coach said so. He did enough tonight to make the team. And so that means that he's going to get carries. The question in real games, and the question is, how many is he going to get? We don't know. My guess is at first it won't be that many. It'll be 5 a game maybe. I think he ends up being the third down back on that team, and then if CJ Anderson goes down, I think he gets a chance to get more carries. He's not going to be a workhorse. He's not going to get 25 carries a game. He just can't do it anymore. But I think that he is pick-upable. If he's on the waiver wire, I think he's worth stashing. If you have someone that you can drop that you're not excited about.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that he's going to make the team. I don't think it's impossible that he could get some third down work from the sheer aspect that he was really good at pass blocking. Like, he did a great job pass blocking. He really stuck in there. And Simeon needs that a lot. Like, Simeon is really going to need that this year. Their line isn't good, and he's not a super adept quarterback. It's not that he can't get it done, but he's going to struggle, so he's going to need the pass blocking. I'll tell you probably the biggest thing that I think is maybe a stop to Jamal Charles being like super useful is D'Angelo Henderson is their rookie is probably the best option that they have on third down. And I don't know. I don't see Jamal making it the whole season and stuff. I'm just not expecting a lot from him. I don't think it's like irresponsible to stash him, but actually, and this is going to be the next topic that I bring up. There are other people, just in my opinion, that I would rather stash. Like, he's not a bad stash option, right? There's almost no like horrible stash option, right? Especially if you draft these guys in the last couple of rounds of the draft. Like, there are good reasons to have these people, and Jamal Charles is an electrifying player. Like, he's a really, really excellent player. And if he does get any amount of touches in that offense, like, he's more talented than anyone there. So there is a reason that you could, there's an argument that you could make for him. But I think D'Angelo Henderson maybe limits the upside for him to me a bit. But the guy that I would probably rather stash out of anybody is the Seahawks. I don't even know his first name, but his last name is Carson, their rookie running back. He was by far the best of the bunch, like, in the entire Seahawks backfield. They are garbage. Like, they're going to be a walking graveyard by week 3. Like, Fat Eddie is just Fat Eddie, and he's also hurt. Like, I don't care how many bonuses he got for losing weight and stuff. Like, he still is pretty fat and slow. Thomas Rawls plays like 3 games every 2 years, and Preseason is like a talented third down back, but he's also hurt too, and he is just that. He's a third down back. They like him, but I don't think he's going to get 20 carries a game. And Carson legitimately looked like an NFL running back. So if he can just kind of like survive the storm, week 5 when people start hitting buys, you may actually have a legitimate person that you could stash. What did you like? Did you get to watch the Seahawks backfield? What did you think of it?
Yeah. I thought that Eddie Lacy looked like Eddie Lacy. And not the rookie Eddie Lacy, but the other one. I think that he looked slow. He looked like a guy who he'll break arm tackles if you try to arm tackle him. So he's a decent short yardage guy. He can turn 2 yards into 3 yards, but he's never going to get more than 10 yards. He just can't do it. He's too slow.
Right.
He can't ever turn the corner. He can't juke anybody. He's just so slow. So and like, as you mentioned, he's always hurt. So I don't see a huge role for him. I know that they like Rawls for some reason. Rawls is always hurt, and he didn't play in the preseason game. I thought Carson looked pretty good. He looks serviceable. If he is ever starting for them, he should be starting for you.
Yeah, I agree. Well, if he starts in a meaningful way, right? Like if he starts and he's clear, if one of the running backs is for sure hurt, and like he is now claimed the starter, and Preseason is clearly the third down back, like he's the guy. Like he's definitely the guy. Even with a crap O-line that they have, like he's the guy to go for. If it's all four of them and they're kind of all like they had 11 people who registered touches last year as an attempt from the running back position. Okay. I do not want to mess with that in any way. I think they're the person who had the most was like just over 100 touches. That's abysmal. I want no part of that volume at all in any way whatsoever. But if for some reason he gets in and he's like the legitimate clean cut number one, and it is a graveyard, like I think it's probably going to be a couple of weeks into the season, Carson could legitimately be a starter for your fantasy team. Like he's a running back 2 flex at the absolute minimum. So just keep an eye on him. Somebody like that. So. What's something else you took away from this week? I think we got a couple of more good ones, in my opinion.
I think the thing that we're the most excited about that we saw this week is, and the reason we're excited about it is because it confirms we've been saying all along, is that...
Oh, give it to me. Tell me. Just whisper it in my ear. Go for it.
Kyle Shanahan's coaching the 49ers.
Yes.
Right, and they look exactly like a Kyle Shanahan offense.
Yeah.
They throw the ball to the X receiver. The X receiver manufactures ways for him to get open, and they throw him the ball.
Yep.
They're going to run the ball well. They're going to run it a lot. And Brian Hoyer is good enough to implement this offense.
Right.
So we've been saying all along, but we're finally able to see it in a real preseason game against a real live defense. This is the Vikings.
Good defense. A good defense.
Yeah, this is a real live defense with a heartbeat, right? They're playing a good defense, the prideful defense, a defense that's been up and coming for a while, but they established themselves as a top 10 or better defense last year.
Oh, dude, in my opinion, the Vikings defense is probably the most adaptable defense in the NFL. Like they have the most guys that can do the most things at all 3 levels of their defense, and a really good defensive coach in Mike Zimmer. Like they are a really stout defense. What the Niners did the other day to the Vikings is no joke. Like that's just how Shanahan offenses are run, right? They didn't run the ball. Like they didn't just line up and kill you through the trenches. Like they don't have an amazing O-line, but they're going to craft ways to move the ball forward at one way or another, right? And it's going to be through the X receiver. It's going to be through the top running back catching and running the football. And it's going to be through their backup running back getting there and doing the same thing. And they're going to have they actually had a really great deep play to Marquise Goodwin, and Brian Hoyer threw a clean deep ball. You're not going to see a ton of usage out of the tight ends, but they will be used when you need to pick up critical third downs and stuff like that. Like this is going to be a team that finds a way to move the ball, and it's going to come through the X receiver and the top 2 running backs, mainly the top running back. But this is just, we knew what they were, and this just blatantly confirms it. It's never not worked. There's no reason to change it. If you can get in on those guys and trade for them before the season starts, I'm telling you, it's one of the best trade values that you can probably get before season starting. So, I was super, super excited to see the 49ers come out and do it to a good defense. That was really, really exciting. One of the other persons that I'm like super excited about because he looks really good, and we talked about him a little bit when we talked about DeShone Kizer, was Corey Coleman looks so good. So good. Like he looks like an incredibly talented receiver, and he just looks like I don't know if poised is necessarily the right word, but he almost looks like calm, right? He looks calm. He looked like he ran solid routes, and he's just obviously athletic, and that dude has some hands. He made 3 really nice catches. DeShone didn't put him in the breadbasket, but he put him where he actually did a good job of putting it where one of the only places that Coleman could have caught the ball, and Coleman went out and got it. Like he was really impressive as a receiver. Yeah,
I think Coleman made it clear that if you give him a chance to catch it, he's going to have a good chance at catching it. You throw it within arm's range of him, and he'll come down with it.
Yeah.
And I think I think he's got a really good chance to be similar and have similar stats to what Terrell Pryor did last year.
Yeah.
In the same Cleveland offense with the different but similarly average and young and inexperienced quarterback. That offense has proven that they can support a receiver with those kind of stats with average quarterbacks. I think that Coleman is more talented or similar talent as Pryor and is more experienced as a receiver.
Talent. Yeah.
He's more experienced as a receiver, but he's a big body. He can make the catches. He probably runs better routes than Pryor did. And so I think he's got a chance to do similar things to what Terrell Pryor did. And he's, really cheap right now. So I think that he's another guy who really looked really good and is going to benefit a lot from Kaiser being the quarterback there.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with Coleman having more experience as a receiver specifically. I do think they're probably both pretty equally talented. Coleman is a bit faster and a crisper route runner. Like, Pryor is a bigger body receiver, and he's going to be better in the red zone and stuff like that. But I mean, Coleman's not a small guy either, but he's a crisper route runner, and he's a bit faster. The other thing too is that the Browns supported Pryor's 1,000-yard season last year with like 4 different quarterbacks. Like you should see a much better line out of the Browns this year. And Kaiser's pretty mobile. I don't think he's just going to sit in there and get smacked. Like, you should see much more quarterback consistency this year. And then we should know that the Browns are not going to start, or they're not going to roll out Brock as the second guy either. So Kessler is likely your backup, and I just don't see them going through 2 quarterbacks again this year. I think that there'll be much more quarterback consistency. So Coleman should also see a greater fluidity with his quarterback as well. So I think that that's probably a plus that I would give him as well. For Pryor too, Pryor should get a plus on that side as well, because he should have quarterback consistency with Cousins this year. So, and then I think the other takeaway for me, and this is more of a generic one, because we talked about a lot of different parts of their offense, was I really tuned in closely to the Philly game this weekend. And one of the first things that I took away is Alshon looks good. I didn't expect him to look bad, but I'm just still worried about him playing more than 8 games, right? Like, I just don't think that he's going to play much more than probably 8 to 10 games. 6 on the low side. He probably won't play any less than that. You're not going to get like just a lost season out of him. I think he's pretty tough and he'll play through, but you're not going to get 14 or 16 games out of him. I just think it's very unlikely. If you, for the ones that he's in, start him. He looks clean, and Wentz looks like he's got a pretty good rapport with him. Wentz also threw a good deep ball to Torrey Smith, and Wentz actually just like saved their ass on a couple of nice plays where he just bailed them out. So I think that the poise and the maturity from year 1 to year 2 that Wentz is showing, maybe that is the reason that he was drafted 1 overall. I'm not a big Wentz supporter, but I mean, the credit goes where credit's due. What's that? Yeah, 2 overall. Sorry. Credit goes where credit's due, and I think that Wentz did a pretty good job yesterday overall he also fed Zach Ertz the ball, which was nice to see. But the biggest takeaway for me is just that their backfield is just absolutely atrocious. I want no part of it, and Blunt really sucks. Like, Blunt really, really is garbage. Wendell Smallwood is their best running back, and that's like really saying something. Darren Sproles is a receiver. Like, that's what he is. He's a receiver. You've said that many a times. That's what he is. Smallwood is probably their best running back. Blunt, everybody keeps bringing up how Blunt had 18 touchdowns last year. That wasn't Blunt. That was the Patriots' top guy. That could have been me or you, and we'd have gotten 18 touchdowns last year. Like, it's not hard. He's not good. The Philly backfield is going to be rough this year.
Yeah, I don't want any part of the Philly backfield. Not only are they not that great, and their offensive line isn't that great at run blocking, but even if the offensive line was good at run blocking, they're going to rotate through all those guys anyway. And I don't really want to be a part of that. Wentz did look good. Alshon will be really good when he plays. I don't know how many games he's going to play. And I think Wentz is probably not quite startable yet in 1 quarterback leagues, but you should definitely start him in 2 quarterback leagues. Or super flex leagues.
That's a great point. We don't talk about super flex a ton around here, but Wentz is a really, really good second starter, because when you're looking for that second starter, you don't want to have to fight for a top tier guy, but you want a guy who's not going to lose his job. And Wentz, there's no way that Wentz is losing the job. Like, he's clearly the best option that they have, and I wouldn't argue that they should start anyone else over Wentz. And it's not that likely that he gets hurt, not any more than anyone else in the NFL, right? So he's a really good second starter for a super flex league or a 2 QB league. So those are some of my biggest takeaways. Do you have any others that you wanted to add?
I think that's all so far. I mean, the biggest thing I would say is that uh, notice that we're not really talking about any stats. So
Yeah.
just to tell you our process is we're not looking at stats saying, oh, this guy caught 2 touchdowns, draft him, or oh, this guy did this. We're looking at who's the starter, who's the backup, and how do they look talent-wise compared to each other so that we can try to project what's going to happen in a few weeks from now once the games start happening.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. We have a question from we have somebody who asked us a question, and we're actually going to bring up like an exact example of some of those things later on. So that'll be good to come full circle on that at the end. We'll do some questions at the end. So also, guys, if you have any questions, put them into the chat, put them in the Discord. We'll answer them when we get to the end. We have a couple of questions lined up that other people asked us, but you can still get questions in if you wanna. If you have any, let us know. We'll be happy to answer them. So now that's sort of the real football side of things, what we were watching for over the weekend. Preseason week 3 was obviously the biggest week, but reining it back into what it necessarily means for your fantasy team, we're going to approach a couple of topics that help you when you're in between now and week 1, right? So we're going to consider this. Now I have a team, right? Most people have drafted. What do you do, right? So Joe, let me ask you this. What's one of the very important things that you like don't do, right? When now you have your team, what do you want to avoid doing? What are some of the things you want to look towards doing and in prepping for week 1 for your fantasy team now that you have your squad?
The first thing you don't want to do is watch football tomorrow and make it, or if you do watch it or have to watch it, make any decisions based off of whatever it is that you see.
Yeah.
Most of those people will not be on teams starting Saturday. So don't care about anything that happens in those games. The things you want to keep an eye on between now and week 1 are injuries, and who are going to be the backups as a result of those kind of things. So keep your eye on people like Odell Beckham and these kind of things. If these guys who are carrying injuries now, if they start practicing, then you have to worry less about who their backups are. If they don't start practicing, you might want to think about rostering their backups late on your roster. But the main thing is don't panic and don't do anything drastic.
That's the most important thing.
You drafted them for a reason. Stick with them. At least make it through the first couple weeks. Yep. But don't abort your team before week 1.
Yeah, some people get their team and they start to look at things and they're like, oh my God, why did I do this? If you drafted them, there's especially before, like round 10 or something like that, do not make any drastic crazy changes. If a guy gets hurt and he's out for the season, that's understandable. You do that, you make you make the drop, you make the pickup, but that shouldn't affect that many people, right? Don't, and Joe brought up a great point. Just don't even watch tomorrow. Like you can watch if you want to watch from a football enjoyment standpoint. Like I will probably either go to the game or watch or whatever, a couple of the games tomorrow, but it may be a key backup position that I'm looking for to see where some of those guys are trying to make the team. Like just if you follow them or something like that, like that's fine. Don't not watch from a pure enjoyment standpoint, but as far as affecting your fantasy team, do not take anything that you see tomorrow with anything but a grain of salt. It's very, very important. Some of the other things that you want to make sure looking towards week 1 is be very hesitant to make trades and stuff like that. Like if it's an obvious one, you can go ahead and take that kind of stuff, but if you do have a trade, like get someone else's opinion first, get our opinion first. Like we're more than happy to look at trades and stuff like that. Just don't pull the trigger without giving it some time, because you need to ask yourself, like, what is this person trying to gain from this? We haven't seen anything. Is there something obvious that I'm missing, or somebody just trying to take advantage? So be careful of that, and then don't make any don't be like, don't start with the, oh yeah, this guy's a great matchup week 1, I'm gonna play this guy. Like be careful of that stuff too. You want to play your studs. You drafted them for a reason, right? So the next thing is we haven't really talked much about defense and special teams really at all for the majority of this of the drafting portion, and I think that's kind of for 2 reasons. Number one, they're less sexy, a little less important. And most people know the consensus-ish top defenses, right? But there's a couple of things that we want to bring up heading into the season, both for really for season long, whether you have a good defense or if you need to stream a defense, which is play a different one each week. And so we're going to cover some of that stuff now. Joe, who's your top defense? I know who it is, but tell everybody who your top defense is going forward and tell me why specifically you think that they're going to be head and tails above the rest.
So my favorite defense this year is the Houston Texans, and there's a few reasons. One, they were the number one, not the number one fantasy defense, but the number one defense in football last year, without J.J. Watt, who had won 3 of the 4 previous defensive MVP awards. So they're getting the best defender in football back on a defense that was number 1. That's reason number 1. Reason number 2 is they have the easiest schedule by far as offenses that they're going to play this year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a joke. The only 2 good offenses they play are the Patriots and the Steelers. And if you want to consider the Colts a good offense, you can. I don't, because I don't know if Andrew Luck's even going to be playing at that time. The Titans are okay. They won't turn the ball over a lot, so those weeks will be a little dry. But they're not. The Titans also aren't going to score a ton of points or get a ton of yards. So I think the Texans are a fantastic defense. They're going to get a lot of sacks. Watt's going to get a lot of these batted things. These batted passes for interceptions that lead to pick sixes, right? I mean, it doesn't even, their secondary is decent, and it's going to look great because they have 3 elite pass rushers.
Yeah. I think as far as the Texans are concerned, I think everything that you bring up is a really good point. I think the point to drive home here is in some of the older leagues, you get a lot of points for just for like the minimal points per game, right? Like shutting people out, getting in between 0 and 7 or 1 and 7 points is like a lot. If you have a scoring system that's set up like that, the Texans are your defense. Like they're gonna be that defense this year. There may be people who score more on special teams, and for leagues like that who also get like a lot of return yards and stuff like that, their specialty for those kind of points. I don't know if the Texans are necessarily defense. Like you're not going to go wrong picking them, right? Like you're not going to have them giving you -4 every week. That's not going to happen. They're going to be a really, really good defense. But the Chiefs are probably better because Dave Tubb is an amazing special teams coordinator. Who else? I had somebody else in mind. The Vikings will likely get you more like pick sixes and stuff like that. You'll probably see more versatility, maybe some more turnovers from somebody like that. But I don't know that there's too many more defenses that I would put ahead of the Texans overall. Just know your scoring, right? This comes back to knowing the settings for your league, and you need defenses are kind of, finicky, so to speak. People want to mess with the scoring settings because they're like, ooh, I can do this and I can do that, and they want to change all the scoring settings. So be careful with that. Check your league scoring settings first. But I think in a standard, straight up, we do not want you to score a lot of points or get a lot of yards type of defense. I think the Texans and the Vikings are probably a slam dunk. I think for people where you need a bit more creativity, so to speak, I actually think my 2 defenses that I would give to those are the Eagles were really good in scoring on special teams last year, and the Chiefs are really good at scoring in special teams last year. So, and not just last year. This is like an every year thing that they've had the same people that they work with, year in and year out. So I think that's the important part. I think a couple of sneaky people that you can get later that I expect to be much better this year. The Chargers were actually like really good on defense last year, and they're going to be better this year. And they were like a high scoring defense while giving up like the 3rd most passing yards per game, and I think either like the 4th or 5th most running yards per game. Those numbers are going to come down too. I think they'll just be overall better on defense. So I think, and nobody's drafting the Chargers. Like they're undrafted. You can actually wait until the last round, load up your roster. You can pick your kicker first. Like you can get the defense last, and nobody's drafting them at all. So you can grab the Chargers then. And then my other like sort of sneaky one is it went out the window. I forgot. Joe, give me yours, and then I'll think of mine and come back to it.
Ravens?
Yeah.
For me, it's the Ravens. They're not being drafted that high. They've looked fantastic in the preseason, and they're always good. They were better than they were drafted last year. They're always going to be a good defense. They're not going to get a ton of turnovers, but they're going to. So in leagues where you need turnovers, they're not as good. But in leagues where yards and points against matter a lot, they're going to be a top 10 defense. They always are.
Yeah, and John Harbaugh is actually a really, really good. He's one of the best special teams coordinators in the league as well. Make no mistake, whoever their special teams coordinator is, I don't care. Erase their name. John Harbaugh does all their special teams, and he's a very, very, very good special teams coordinator. So there's not it's not unfathomable to think that they'll score anywhere from 2 to 5 touchdowns on special teams, even with the kickoff changes the way that they are and everything. So be wary of that. Like, you can get a surprise touchdown out of them, and they may be able to score you some extra points. The other one that I was thinking of was the Rams, because Wade Phillips. Wade Phillips is a really good defensive coordinator. They have talent on the defensive line. Aaron Donald's an absolute monster. Like, their defensive line is really, really good, and there's no doubt about it. Like, if you could put pressure on the quarterback, you're gonna be successful on defense, and their defense is the only thing that's gonna be good about that team this year. So, like, they were bottom third last year. They'll probably be closer to the top 15 this year. So if you need somebody, once again, that's kind of being undrafted, the Rams are a solid defense to go for. So that's somebody to consider doing as well. You got anybody else, or you want to go on to a couple of trade targets for this year?
Yeah, let's go on to some trade targets. All
right, cool. So one of the things that we wanted to address for coming up to the start of the season, of the fantasy season specifically, we were talking about being wary of trades that people offer you coming in hot to week 1. But this is something to keep in mind, that you need to keep in the back of your mind for the first 4 weeks of the season. Some teams and some fantasy players specifically are prime examples of trade targets that you can get at a discounted value before they actually hit their stride. So, Joe, there's a couple of people that meet this criteria. Give me one of the ones that you like that wind up being prime trade targets like a couple of weeks into the season.
I mean, the one guy who does this every year, basically, is Russell Wilson, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he starts slow, this whole Seahawks offense, but him in particular, he starts slow every year. Somebody drafts him high, he starts slow, and then they either cut him or trade him, and then he ends up winning the league for somebody else. Mm-hmm. This happened in so many leagues, and it's happened so many times.
I've done it before.
Yeah, I have too.
Yeah, I've fallen for it. Like, it's experienced people too. Like, this isn't just a noob thing that happens. Like, people fall for it, and it's like, how long are you willing to grind it out before these slow starters come into their own and do the thing that you drafted them to do, right?
So the best thing to do with those guys, like Russell Wilson, especially in this case, is let somebody else draft him, let him cut him or trade for him for when he's cheap, and then you win the league with him at the end. So you let that person let Russell lose games for somebody else, and then let him win games for you. So he's one that does that a lot. And again, the Seahawks receivers kind of go with him: Doug Baldwin and Jimmy Graham and whoever else, Tyler Lockett, maybe if you want to go that route.
Yeah, I think just in general, and there's another team that does this too. We were talking about them before, like last week, I think. This is just in general slow starters, right? People who notoriously start slow, and the Packers are known for doing this too. Like, yeah, they may come out and have a really shootout game like one time, but notoriously they start slowly, and then every single year, here they come. The fucking pain train is just blindsiding people. So if you have the opportunity, Doug Baldwin, even maybe somebody like Devontae Adams this year, you probably won't be able to get somebody like Jordy, but like Devontae Adams, Doug Baldwin, Jimmy Graham, those kind of guys, Russell Wilson, even Aaron Rodgers. Make somebody fall for the fact that he's going to be mediocre this year for once ever, and then try and make him a trade, even if you have to buck up a little bit extra. And, you can make these kind of trades go through. So slow starting teams, pay attention to those. Like, trends happen in the NFL. Be wary of those. And you can sometimes get a really good value on your trade, maybe even a couple of rounds difference, trade value on somebody who's on a slow starting team. Another type of person that you can try and be a trade target for is teams that just have a really tough early schedule, right? Like the Chargers this year, I think. Who do they get? Like the first 4 weeks of the season, they get like
their first
Denver
5 games
twice, and like another couple of good defenses and stuff like that.
Their first 5 games are Broncos, Dolphins, Chiefs, Eagles, Giants.
Yeah, yikes! Like super.
That is
yikes.
brutal. Those teams all have good defenses. The Eagles are the worst of those, but the rest of those teams have really, really good defenses, and they play the Broncos again in Week 7. So their first 7 games, they play some elite defenses. So they might look like they're turning the ball over a lot. They might look a little sloppy on offense. That's when you can target these guys for cheap, because the second half of their season, they have a really easy schedule.
Yeah, they don't play anybody above like the 20th ranked defense like the second half of the season.
Second half.
Like it's abysmal that the people that they get to play. And the good part here is that you want to be, or I guess the part that you're really looking for is you want to make sure that you trade for these people a week before it starts, right? Like you don't want to get to and be like, all right, well, hard part of the schedule is done. Like people catch on to that kind of stuff. Trade them the week before they play the Broncos a second time. Stash them if you have the capability to hold on to him. Trade for Keenan Allen before the second time that he plays the Broncos, right? And then you get that guy for the rest of the season on an easy schedule. Phillip Rivers should be a really good one. I doubt Gordon will probably still get his lion's share of everything throughout that entire time, but like Phillip Rivers, Keenan Allen, and Hunter Henry will probably be like prime trade targets coming into week 6, 7 of the season, somewhere right around there. So be looking for those guys. Look for other teams that have a hard starting schedule, and see if you can, and take notes while that's happening too. Take notes of the guys that are getting volume, who's working through the offense and what positions. That's the kind of stuff that you want to be watching, because just because they're going against tough defenses doesn't mean that the offense still isn't trying to tell you what it's going to do later on in the year. So be wary of those kind of stuff. I would say the last people who are prime trade targets are maybe guys that have early buys, and then you can maybe try and get a free game out of those guys, even if the person is just slightly worse. I'm willing to take a guy that won't cost me a week in general. So be looking at people with early buys. Who has the first buys this week? I think Falcons, Redskins,
Saints have an early buy.
Saints. Yeah, I think the who else has an early buy?
The Dolphins also have an early buy.
Buffalo, Dolphins, they all those guys look for early buys and maybe be willing to take a shot on somebody who is I'm not saying take a terrible person because they've already passed their bye. Like you still want good players, but if it's a 1 point, 2 point per game difference and I get a free game out of that person and they have to eat a bye later on in the year, I'm willing to make that trade because it's worth it to not miss a week. So
yeah, and the other thing you want to look for, I think, is people who are doing some kind of statistical anomaly. So if they're getting a lot of like goal line carries, they're getting volume. So running back, or if they're a receiver, they're getting a lot of red zone targets, and they're just not scoring touchdowns, then that's a guy you can trade for because more than likely they'll correct.
Yes.
Right. So if they're getting all their team's goal line carries, and then by week 6 they only have 2 touchdowns, that's probably pretty fluky. It's going to correct.
Yeah. Yeah, you should actually be really excited because that guy's coming back in swinging. Like that the odds are in your favor at this point. It's probably going to correct itself.
And so if you have those guys, don't trade them. And if you don't have them, trade for them. If someone's getting frustrated that, this guy's getting 100 yards per game, but he's not getting a touchdown, the touchdowns are going to come.
Right. Yeah, 100%. That's something that you need to be. This is why, once again, reading box scores cannot do you the entire justice of the football game, right? You need to try and watch these things. But luckily, Joe and I watch these games, and we want to make sure that we pass on the correct information to you guys. So with that being said, we're going to move on to a couple of questions that we received from people. Once again, guys, if you haven't joined our Discord, join our Discord server. I put it in the chat notes. I'll also link it into the description of this video. I'm also going to attempt to do some timestamps for this video, so let me know how that works out. Give me some feedback on that. We'll see how that goes. But these questions, we have 3 questions that a couple of different people asked, and we'll go for it. What RB tier is Isaiah Crowell in now that Deshaun Kaiser is the starting QB in Cleveland?
Top of tier 2 for me. So that would be right around RB 10, RB 15, something like that.
Okay. So we do our tiers a bit differently. This is a little bit interesting. He's like the.
Oh, sure. Okay. If you're putting Zeke and Le'Veon and David Johnson in their own tier, yeah, which probably you should.
That's what I did.
Then he's the back of tier 2 or top of tier 3.
Yeah. Okay. So whether you want to call that tier 0, tier 1, tier S, whatever you want to call it, those 3 guys are in one of their own. He's at the bottom of tier 2 for me. Like he's solidly in the bottom of tier 2. I don't think that there's anybody else that has as solid of a floor with also some decent upside. Like he's going to be no worse than the 12th back. Like he's going to be an RB1, right? So it's somewhere right around RB12, somewhere right around that, probably closer to RB10. I just think he's going to get insane amounts of volume, and then they just can't stack the box now that the rest of their players are even somewhat relevant because Kaiser starts. Make no mistake, if for some reason Osweiler starts again during the year, everyone on that team just plummets. Like, he's really, really rough. Yeah, trade him immediately and hope that they don't watch our stream. Like, just please trade them immediately. So, but for me, yeah, he's entrenched right in that area. He's low end RB2 for me, but he's the last of the RB2 guys, like, or the tier 2 guys, which is, I mean, that's solid. If you can get that guy somewhere in the beginning of the third round, like, you're really, really doing well. That's a great guy to have right around there. So, all right. So I'm prefacing this by saying you'll have noticed that there's an absence of kickers on this stream, and that's for good reason, because we hate kickers. Having said that, kickers, I mean, it's true. We just do. Like, we're not gonna sugarcoat that at all. We don't like them. We would rather play without them. We think that they're just statistically very improbable. They're tough to decide who's going to come out, and they're just very random, right? So having said that, there are some things that can lend themselves to giving you some discrepancy as far as what you want to decide with kickers. So we had somebody ask us a kicker question. We're going to do the service, and we're going to answer the kicker question and tell you what we look for in kickers for the entire season. So we're going to expound on this a bit. So somebody asked, everybody knows Justin Tucker is the top kicker. Who are you looking for after that? Okay. So Joe, tell me your next top kicker, or the next maybe 2 kickers that you're looking for, and then maybe somebody that you're definitely not looking at to be kicker for this season.
Well, the guy who I'm not looking at is always kicking for the Jets.
Well, right. Okay. I was maybe talking about somebody who who people are on. Who people are maybe thinking of that could be a viable kicker that maybe won't be a viable kicker this year. Right.
So, well, I think the guy who's going to decline the most, and we've been talking about this offense declining a bit, is Matt Bryant.
That was mine too.
It's not that, as the case with kickers in fantasy football in general, it's rarely, if ever, about the kicker, and it's more about the team and what opportunity the kicker is going to get. Most NFL kickers will make everything inside of 50 yards, just about, except for Aguayo.
Right.
Everybody else will make everything inside of 50 yards. So, they're all pretty much the same as far as talent goes, more or less. You want to pick teams who are going to get in the red zone and struggle once they get there.
Yeah.
So teams who are dependent on short wide receivers, teams who are dependent on quick, smaller running backs, or have teams that don't have great offensive lines. These are the kinds of guys who are going to get in the red zone and struggle. So those are the kind of teams you want to look for. And the Ravens are a perfect example, right? They have very mediocre running backs. They don't have any big body targets to throw to in the red zone. Whenever they get one, it's a tight end and he gets hurt. So this is why Tucker is so good, is because their offense is good enough to get across the 50, and then they stall every time, just about.
Yeah, I think that it's an incredible point to bring home. Like, even so, Justin Tucker is, he should just rename his name to Justin Kicker. Justin Tucker is likely the best kicker that we have ever seen in football ever. He's just incredible. Like, if you watch him warm up, I'm pretty certain he could make a 70-yard kick, and he wants to try one. Like, I won't be surprised if he gets the opportunity to attempt one. He is really, really, really good. Okay, but even Justin Tucker, the best kicker in football, it's not all about him. Like, he doesn't get the opportunity to walk on the field anytime that he wants to. The Ravens set him up for this opportunity almost every time, and they have been notoriously horrible in the red zone, and so good at getting there, really good at getting there, terrible inside the red zone. It's hilarious. I almost think that, like, at this point they're like, you know what, let's just stall out and let Tucker do it. It's just it's fine at this point. So you need to look for teams that are really good at moving the ball between the 20s and really suck in the red zone. Like Joe said, when you have shorter receivers, that's usually good. Hopkins has been the guy that I've been looking for in the past, because he's got a leg, and they are really good at moving the ball. Like, Cousins is really good at moving the ball. When things tighten up in the red zone, it's a bit harder, and they struggle to run the football. So I usually go to them. Somebody who could be much better this year, I'm sorry. He's going to be worse this year, is because I think that they're going to score more, but I don't think that they're going to stall out in the red zone more, is maybe Josh Brown, the kicker for the Giants. I think they're going to wind up.
Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're going to be able to score a bit better this year, and I don't think they're going to wind up stalling out because of that horrible run game like they have in the past. So I think that you could see. I think that you could see the Giants kicker go up in value a bit this year. Somebody that I'm probably not too keen on picking up this year is, even though Aguayo was dropped, I probably don't want any part of the Tampa Bay kicking game, simply because they're going to be a really high boom or bust offense, right? Like they're going to score from really far away, like Evans or Deshaun Jackson deep ball, or they're just like going to stall out and have a 3-and-out. So you're going to see a lot of punts, a lot of scores, right? And a lot of turnovers. You're going to see a lot of all three of those things. So you're definitely going to see a lot of turnovers. So teams like that are people that you don't want to participate in their kicking game at all. Like there's almost no chance that any Tampa Bay kicker will have like 15 or 20 fantasy points this year, right? They're going to punt, they're going to score a touchdown, or they're going to turn the ball over, right? You're not going to get a lot of kicks, and especially from super far away if that's the kind of kicker that you need to talk about. So just be wary. You're looking for teams that move the ball effectively but struggle in the red zone. Those are the kind of kickers that you're looking for.
Yeah. And similarly, on the other side, you can also kind of game the schedule a little bit as far as this goes. Yeah, there are 100%. Teams who are really good at red zone defense and that aren't as good at other types of defense. The Patriots are always like this, but there are other teams that are like this too. Yeah. And so you can kind of stream kickers if you want against them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a very, very viable strategy. 100%.
Now, can we end and not talk about kickers ever again?
Yeah,
the whole season.
I would prefer to never talk about kickers again. If you need kickers in your DFS and stuff like that, I'll just go with that strategy. Like that really is the strategy. That we shouldn't have to say it again like the entire year. Like that's all that we do. And it usually works. But kickers are just a very random part of the game. So you want to find people that they're good between the 20s and they struggle in the red zone. That's all you want to look for. And then somebody who obviously doesn't miss their kicks. Like that's all you can look for. Okay. So yes, we should not have to talk about kickers at all for the rest of the year.
Nothing left to say.
All right. So coming full circle to what we were talking about for as far as box scores and people that did really well in a preseason or this and that, we have another question from somebody who was asking, John Brown looked better this week with his 2-touchdown game. Great catch over the shoulder. He did have a great catch over the shoulder. That's true. Should I look to pick him up? He's available in my league. This is an exact example of why box scores don't necessarily matter. Obviously, this person watched the game. I'm really happy about that. It was a great over the shoulder catch. Maybe they just saw a highlight. It doesn't matter. But it was a really good catch. I'm not pooping on John Brown. Like it was a good catch. He made a solid, tough catch and a great throw. That was a great throw too. However, this is the kind of person that he does the same thing. Like he does the same thing all the time. He has one route in the entire route tree, right? He runs the 9 every single time and he just goes in a straight line and he will make good catches. Like he's an athletic. I don't know if this is a John Brown usage problem by the team. I would assume not, because Bruce Arians is usually very creative with how he uses his talented players, or if this is a John Brown is too bad to run any other part of the route tree, but he's only going to do one thing for you. He may get like anywhere close to 1,000 yards, but it's going to be a 0-yard or like a 5-yard game and then a 200-yard game and then a 5-yard game and a 200-yard game and then a 0-yard game and then a 185-yard game. Like that's the kind of games he's going to have. It's going to be an incredible roller coaster. So if you want Deshaun Jackson 2.0 with Carson Palmer, who's dead at quarterback, you can take him, you can pick him up, but I'm going to advise against that unless you're in a really deep league. You need him for a DFS play, or you are just you absolutely have to win that week, and there's no way for you to win unless you need 30 points. Those are the ways that you can play him, right?
Yeah, and I think he, especially in PPR leagues, which is becoming more regular, is kind of stay away from him. He's not going to get a lot of targets. He's not going to get a lot of catches.
Yeah.
He's already going to get at most 5 targets a game on running these deep routes, and the completion percentage of course on these deep routes is not going to be very high. So you're looking at 2 or 3 catches a game probably most games. There will be a game where he goes off. Like if he stays healthy and he keeps running deep routes, there will be a game where he gets behind the defense 2 or 3 times and he goes off. Don't pick him up.
He will win someone $1 million this year. Like he's gonna win someone $1 million this year. He may win you the fantasy game where you have 4 people on bye. Like he may win you that game. do not be a John Brown truther and start to tell me that this guy is going to like win you your fantasy season if you play him every week. He's not going to do it. It won't happen. Please do not pick him up for that purpose, right? If you want to stash him and play him for the reasons that we stated, those are okay. But do not play him as an every week starter, and for the love of God, do not pick him up as a good PPR receiver. That's just awful. Like if you're in,
good in best ball leagues, good in
great in best
tournament
ball
play.
I was just about to say that. He's really good in tournament play. He's really good in best ball leagues. He's really good in old touchdown only leagues. Like those are the kind of leagues that you want this guy in. That's acceptable to pick him up. Sorry, I didn't ask the type of league you were in. I apologize. I was just collecting questions. Had a lot to do before the stream started. So if you're in one of those leagues, you're more than welcome to pick him up. But you should know, kind of by the info that we've given you, the kind of places that he struggles, and you should be able to adapt accordingly. So, Joe, do you have anything else for this week?
Don't watch the games tomorrow, or if you watch them, just watch, your favorite players or guys from your college or whatever you want. Like cheer for individual players to make the team. That's great. Don't take anything away from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, if you think that there's a good guy that you follow on Instagram that you want him to have a job, hey man, root for that guy. I don't have any problem with that. Be careful what you take away from these games as far as from a fantasy perspective. I want to give a shout out to Flea Flicker. Flea Flicker is one of the newer platforms to play fantasy football on. If you're just creating a last minute league, get on there. They have a really, really high degree of customizability that or customization that like ESPN and Yahoo don't really offer you. So try them out, give them a try. It's just fleaflicker.com. Go on there. They have a really, really great setup as far as customization is concerned. Wanted to give them a shout out. And then also next week we will talk about the final cuts. Because everybody's cuts are due on Saturday, I believe, and with the new cut structure, there could be a huge wave of cuts rather than just the last final 53. So next weekend we will talk about final cuts. We will talk about matchups for week 1. That's going to be a huge excitement. I can't wait for it. We will also talk about DFS. We'll talk about the things like what contests you should be trying to get into, what the difference between the dollar amount contests mean, what the different contests are in general, and then what we're looking for and how we're targeting specific players for DFS. It's going to be a lot of fun, guys. Don't miss it. We really can't wait. We're glad to be back for this season. One more week, and then we finally have real football that we are excited to watch. So we can't wait. We're going to see you guys next time. Catch y'all later. Peace out, Joe.
Pro football starts in 8 days. We'll prepare you in 7 days. Stay classy.
See you later.